With that, we welcome in my friend Mark Long of the Associated Press. He's always kind enough to join us here on 1010XL in Jacksonville. Mark, how you doing, man?
Hi, doing well. How about you, Hacker?
Hey, Mark, we're good. Thank you for the time. And all right, you and I haven't talked since before the draft. You've now gotten a couple of weeks to look at these 13 new rookies, including Anton Harrison at tackle there. Your initial thoughts, Mark, on the rookie class the Jaguars drafted?
Yeah, I thought a couple of things. I think, if you watched last season and the way it ended, this team, you can make a strong case that this team should have gone out and signed the world on defense, right? And they didn't do it. They didn't do a lot in free agency on the defensive side of the ball, and they did nothing in the first 3 rounds on defense on that side of the ball. And, it's a little bit of a head scratcher, but then you start talking to people and you realize, okay, well, what they did was they doubled down on offense. They said, listen, it doesn't matter who we get in the draft. One guy or two guys on the defense side of the ball aren't really going to help us stop Patrick Mahomes or stop Josh Allen or slow down Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase or that's not really what's going to happen with one guy. Those guys are that good. They are elite quarterbacks, and so what we're going to do is, we're going to double down on offense and outscore them. And so I find it interesting now when you start looking back that that's what they did. They traded for Calvin Ridley. They tagged Evan Ingram. They used their first 3 picks on Anton Harrison, a right tackle, Brenton Strange, a tight end, and then the running back out of Auburn. And so Tank Bigsby. So those 3 guys, those 5 guys, are really going to help this team kind of take the next step. Plus, being in the second year of Doug Peterson's offense, plus Trevor Lawrence being in the second year of an offense for the first time in a few years here. So all of those pieces, they are really, really doubling, tripling, quadrupling down, whatever you want to call it, on the offensive side of the ball. Totally opposite what most people would think when you watch them not be able to sack Patrick Mahomes in that divisional round game back in January. So it's pretty fascinating. But when you watch these guys, you just go, oh gosh, now I know. Now I see what they saw. I mean, Tank Bigsby looks the part. Brenton Strange looks the part. Anton Harrison looks the part. These are big dudes who are they're not tweeners. They're not misfit. They know who they are. They know their position, and they bring a lot to the table. Very, very productive players in college. And I do believe that they're going to help instantly on the offensive side of the ball for the Jacksonville Jags in 2023.
Mark Long of the Associated Press. You know, Mark, seeing Cam Robinson out at OTAs earlier this week, the thought popped into my mind. It's not a story now. It'll become a story when we find out how long the suspension will be, but one would think it would not be any longer than 6 games. And with that as a backdrop, he's going to be back. I mean, it's not like Cam Robinson's not here. So if it is, say, what's 6 games, right? That's probably going to be the max it'll be. Walker Little, Anton Harrison are your 2 tackles for the first 6 weeks. Mark, if things are going well, then what do you do when Cam Robinson becomes eligible to come back?
Well, that's the $1 million question, right? And really, for the Jags case, it's a $16 million question because that's what, they would pay Cam Robinson to be on this roster. I think he needed to be here. I was a little surprised that he's here, but I thought it was a genius move on his part to show up to OTAs, to be engaged. Here's the thing Cam Robinson can't afford right now. He can't afford for Walker Little to become the team's left tackle and Anton Harrison to become the team's right tackle. And the Jags look at that and, okay, well, we got Josh Wells who can play left and right. Let's just roll with those 3. And we'll trade Cam Robinson or cut Cam Robinson and use that money to maybe go sign a pass rusher, one of those big-time free agent pass rushers. That's a thought process that they could have. And I think it's super important for Cam to come in here and show that, hey, I'm the left tackle. I'm in good shape. My knee is fine. And I want to be here and I want to contribute. And no matter how long the suspension is, I'm going to be a factor for this team whether you have to wait for me for 4 games or 6 games or 2 games or whatever it is, I'm worth you gambling on or taking a chance on. And so, because what happens is when he gets suspended, assuming he gets suspended, guaranteed money in his contract becomes void. So what's a guaranteed contract right now at $16 million, $22 million cap hit, that's gone. If he gets suspended, that's all of a sudden the guarantees are voided. Now he's still on the books for $16 million, but only if you keep him on the roster. So they could part ways with Cam Robinson and save $16 million if and when he gets suspended, whether it's 2, 4, 6, 10 games, whatever it is. They could part ways with him and save $16 million against the cap. So I think from that standpoint, he has to know that. His agent has to know that. And so from that standpoint, it is super important for him to show up, get on the field, and prove to the team that he is worth keeping at $16 million. Because I'll guarantee you this, Cam Robinson's probably not going to get another team, especially with a guy who's suspended or facing a suspension, to give him $16 million. It's not going to happen. That doesn't happen in June or July unless, you have a major injury at a starting left tackle position, because that's the only spot he's played, right? So you have to have – there's only 32 starting spots. So he's got the 31 others. So he'd have to go somewhere – he'd have to have something happen in one of those spots to where they go, okay, we have a massive hole and we're going to pay him top line dollar. It's just not going to happen. So his best bet is to convince the Jags that he needs to be here and that he wants to be here and that they need him to be here. So, for him to do that, he's got to be here. So I thought it was pretty ingenious on his camp, probably the smart thing to do, show up, be present, be out there in the field. He was not involved in team drills, but he certainly was working with the team, and that's a step forward for him.
Mark Long of the Associated Press here with us on 1010XL in Jacksonville. Mark, you've got your eyes on Calvin Ridley now for a couple of weeks. Again, the caveat always is this time of year, T-shirt, helmet, shorts, no pads, obviously, no contact. So it's hard to decipher too much. Having said that, boy, Calvin Ridley looks awfully good out there in a Jaguar uniform.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I saw one today where Trevor Lawrence threw a ball up high, and I thought it was going to go over his head. And he's just got, catch radius. He's just got some long outstretched arms, good hands. He dropped the ball today, and this is another thing that I really, really liked. Not that he dropped the ball, but how he reacted to dropping a ball.
Yeah, he was mad. Yeah, I saw that. He was angry.
This isn't a guy who just ran back to the huddle or jumped over to the side and did his push-ups or whatever. What he did was he looked at Trevor, and he kind of, gave the whole the wheels signal for his hands. Let's run it back. And so what happened was Trevor Lawrence stayed in his spot. Calvin Ridley hustles back, and they re-ran the exact same play. And this time, Calvin Ridley caught the ball, no questions asked. And it was just that kind of work ethic, that kind of dedication, that kind of, hey, listen, my bad, but let's fix it. Let's go back and fix it and do it right so that we can move on. And it's a complete little nuance, Hacker, but it was something super cool to see because you don't see it very often in this league where a guy takes it upon himself like that in practice to run it back. And so it shows a couple things. Obviously, it shows his dedication. And then secondly, I think his commitment, and which, very similar there, but also just his ability, his want and his desire to get it right and be a team leader and a guy everybody else can kind of look up to and watch.
Mark, it's not very often that a guy calls the Jaguars wanting to come here. But we found out earlier this week during OTAs with special teams coordinator Heath Farwell met the media that Brandon McManus apparently reached out to Jacksonville and said, or had his agent reach out to Jacksonville and wanted to come here, wanted to be a part of what the Jaguars are doing. And, boy, that took me aback a little bit because we have not had that for a long, long time. What did you make of that story?
Yeah, really, really kind of a cool deal. And I think the guy you have to credit for him probably being here is Joe DeCamillis. That's what really happened was he called Joe D, and he said, hey, listen, they're cutting me here. Do you know of a spot? And Joe DeCamillis, who's apparently good friends with Heath Farwell, two special teams coordinators. I mean, obviously Farwell's a younger one, but Joe D's been in the league 30-something years. And Joe D said, "Yeah, let's you should contact Heath Farwell with the Jags." And sure enough, then his agent gets involved, Drew Rosenhaus, but before that even happens, McManus calls Heath Farwell, cold called him, and got on the line and said, "Hey, I'm available. What's it look like at Jacksonville? Is there opportunity there?" And then of course Farwell's got to take it to Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke and get it all approved. The agent's got to get involved, talk and whatnot. But it was really cool the way it happened because you don't see it happening like that very often. Certainly agents do work, this, that, and the other. But, McManus, you talked to him today, and he's been kind of putting out feelers for years. It's like he made it very clear that when he goes pregame warm-up, no matter wherever team they're facing, when he does pregame warm-up, he makes it a point to go meet the opposing special teams coach so that guys know who he is, guys know what he's about, and he just builds these relationships. And so it was a little bit of a cold call for Heath Farwell, but it wasn't necessarily a cold call. I mean, it was certainly out of the blue, but this was a relationship that they started last year in London. Before the game, before the Broncos played the Jags in London, McManus went up, found Farwell, introduced himself. They talked about Joe D, some of the people they had crossed. And so that's really where this thing started. I don't think that McManus had it on his radar that he was going to get cut. Certainly that wasn't the case. What I think he was thinking was, hey, this does happen in this league, and you're smart, and it's really a smart move would be to make sure people know who you are. Kickers can kick into their 40s easily, and so he's 31 years old, and he doesn't see himself leaving the NFL anytime soon. So he looks at this. He's got a second decade with a new team here potentially, and you don't do that just by not having friends and knowing people. It is a league where it pays to know people, and for his standpoint, he's been trying to get to know the whole league for 9 years.
Final moments here with Mark Long of the Associated Press. Mark, as we make the turn for home, you talked earlier about how important you thought it was for Cam Robinson to be at OTAs. Again, these are voluntary, and that's important, but I think of the 90 guys, like 88 of them are here. Evan Ingram cannot be here because he's not technically under contract because he hasn't signed anything yet, the franchise tag or a long-term deal. And then there's Josh Allen, who's coming into a contract year. And by my account, Josh Allen, I believe, is the only guy that was allowed to be here that was not, because, again, Ingram cannot be here. So do you read anything into Josh Allen not being here now for 2 weeks of OTAs?
The only thing to read into it is Josh Allen is kind of shooting his shot, so to speak. He's, this is what he's got. He can hold out from voluntary and at least send a message that, hey, I'm not happy. I should have gotten paid, or I think I should have gotten paid. Because most guys don't want to go into their fifth year without a contract. They feel like, they've proven some things, and certainly Josh played really well late last season in the playoffs, was really good. But, coming off 8 sacks, it's not like he's also, I think it would have been crazy for him to expect a $15 to $20 million a year deal as well. So, but my guess is, having not spoken to Josh or his people, the only thing I can assume is this is just kind of his way of voicing his displeasure. Now, does it matter? Probably not. Josh is still on the hook. I think he's on for $11 or $12 million. He'd be crazy to try to sit out. You come, you get paid, you try to prove your worth, right? Josh Allen would be one of the top 5 defensive linemen on the free agent market next year, or even right now. He would be a big time commodity because of his age, because of what he has, his durability, because of his productivity. So, but that's my assumption. I don't know. For all I know, Josh could have family issues. He could have personal issues. He could just have decided to work out on his own during this voluntary period and planning to be here for the mandatory stuff and move on. But, until I hear otherwise, usually when guys like that at his level, team captains are skipping the voluntary stuff, it's usually to send a message. And I don't know what the the end goal here, the end game is, because I don't think he's going to get a contract. I'd be shocked if he did get a contract before the season. I think the Jags are in a wait and see, prove it kind of mode with him. You got to show us that you can be consistent every single week and that you can take your game to the next level, because they've been waiting on it. And he's shown glimpses, and they've just kind of been waiting on him to explode and become the player everybody thinks he can be.
Mark Long of the Associated Press, always kind enough to join us here on 1010XL in Jacksonville. Mark, know you're busy, man. Thank you for the time. We'll see you out there next week at OTAs.
All right, sounds good, Hack. Thank you.